A look at some of the top stories. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation appointed John Accra as new interim executive director, following the resignation of its previous head. The US-backed aid operations in Gaza resumed a day later, though residents in North Gaza reported no aid deliveries has arrived yet. A Palestinian official claimed Hamas accepted a Gaza ceasefire proposal, but Israel dismissed the statement as false. US envoy denied Hamas agreed to the deal, while Netanyahu vowed to recover all hostages amid rising tensions and far-right violence in Jerusalem. Russia claims to have shot down 99 Ukrainian drones, whereas Ukraine reports 60 drones launched in a single overnight attack. Meanwhile, China denies supplying lethal weapons to Russia amid intensifying strikes described by Zelensky as increasingly brazen and large-scale. It has been reported by Taiwan's Ministry of National Defense that 61 play sorties and 9 planned vessels and 1 official ship has been detected in Taiwan's air defense identification zone today. China's foreign ministry denied Ukrainian claims on May 27, stating it has never supplied lethal weapons to any party in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. North Korea's State Secretary Minister Ri Chang-dae has departed Pyongyang to attend a high-level security meeting in Russia, KCNA has reported. The meeting is expected to include Russia's Sergei Shoigu, officials from Iran and the UAE. This signals growing security cooperation among these nations. India has approved a framework to develop its most advanced twin-engine fifth-generational stealth fighter jet amid escalating tensions with Pakistan, following a 4-day military clash this month. The Defense Ministry said state-run Aeronautical Development Agency will invite bids for a prototype. Chinese Premier Li Qing has called for stronger trade ties with Malaysia. Amid his visit for the ASEAN talks in Southeast Asia, Malaysia praised progress on Myanmar, while the Philippines said it remains open to deals with China to ease the South China Sea tensions. Washington has dismissed claims by Hamas that it agreed to a new ceasefire deal in Gaza. The group said it accepted a proposal from the U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff involving a 70-day truce and the release of 10 Israeli hostages. But Witkoff called Hamas' response disappointing and completely unacceptable, adding that the group had not agreed to his actual terms. Israel too rejected the plan, stating no responsible government could agree to the conditions amid stalled negotiations. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reaffirmed his commitment to recover all hostages from Gaza, both living and dead, vowing, "We are not giving up." Let's listen in to the Israeli Prime Minister.
יש קשיים. החמאס עיקש, הוא סרבן, כך אמר גם הנציג האמריקני הערב, ויטקוף, זה נכון. אנחנו לא מרפים מהמשימה. אנחנו החזרנו עד היום 148 חטופים חיים. ויש עוד 20 בוודאות שהם חיים. ויש גם אחרים שאינם בחיים. ואנחנו מתכוונים להחזיר את כולם. אז, כך היום, נכריע את מבקשי נפשנו, נשיב את כל חטופינו, נוודא שעזה לא תהווה איום על ישראל.
Tensions continued to rise in Jerusalem as far-right Israelis chanted "Death to Arabs" and clashed with Palestinians during the annual Jerusalem Day Parade. Opposition leader Yair Lapid condemned the event as a festival of hatred and racism. We have Joshua Barnes, anchor and correspondent, joining us live from New Delhi. Joshua, what can you tell us more about this situation?
Well, yes, absolutely. Assuming there have been some developments from those breaking news updates that we brought you late yesterday. Of course, reports saying that Hamas had agreed to Steve Witkoff's proposal, which could see the release of 10 hostages in exchange for a 70-day truce. Some clarification today from the United States saying that this is not the case. Now, this, of course, comes on the backdrop of a continued offensive by Israel in the Gaza Strip, which has seen, if we believe reports that are coming from Hamas-run health ministries, over 50,000 deaths to Palestinians living within the enclave. Also concerns over the humanitarian crisis. Starvation is a topic that has been raised by many humanitarian groups given an 11-week aid blockade that was in place. Aid is being now brought into Gaza, but the amount of aid that's needed, experts say and humanitarian groups say that the aid that's coming in is just a drop in the ocean compared to what is needed after an extended blockade lasting months. The Israeli offensive has moved forward amid discussions ongoing over a potential ceasefire. In recent weeks, Benjamin Netanyahu says that his goal is to take control of Gaza in order to achieve his key aims, which are disbanding Hamas, disarming Hamas, and making sure that an attack like October the 7th can't continue. This, of course, with hostages still being held by the armed group based in Gaza. Over 50 hostages, both dead and alive, currently being held within the Gaza Strip. This is something rare, very rarely seen in conflict for the dead hostages to be remained in captivity. They are normally returned. And when we did have hostage releases, it was a show. Hamas put on a stage and had members of their group in black outfits. The process was extremely difficult for Israelis, and Benjamin Netanyahu, during that ceasefire period, said that if hostages weren't released after phase 1, then military action would resume, and that is what we have seen. Looking broader now at these conversations that have been had around potential peace, of course, Egypt and Qatar have been mediating conversations that have still been ongoing. The US have also been involved as well. Steve Witkoff, his proposal is what sources were saying Hamas had agreed to. Now originally this proposal was for around 42 days of ceasefire with the release of hostages in return, which would have allowed both parties to continue having negotiations over a longer lasting peace. It also would have meant that there would have been an impasse in the fighting, which has caused devastation across the Gaza Strip. It seems from the US confirmation that these sources and these reports that Hamas had agreed to that Witkoff proposal, it seems not to be the case. A glimmer of hope was there, though Israel of course need to agree to this as well, and Benjamin Netanyahu has been very clear he doesn't want a partial release of hostages. He wants all of the hostages to be released. He wants Hamas to be disbanded. Until that is the case, I think violence in the region will continue with IDF action continuing. We know it has stepped up recently, in recent weeks. The strength and the amount of strikes at land and air which are taking place has intensified. Within a 48-hour period, there were 200 IDF strikes on areas that they say Hamas operatives are running in. These are civilian areas. This has been a consistent theme throughout the conflict. Israel say Hamas are hiding in civilian infrastructure, whether that's schools and shelters, hospitals. It's very, very difficult for Israel, as they say, to specifically target Hamas without civilian casualties. Discussions will continue, conversations around a ceasefire will continue, but ultimately it needs to be agreed by all sides, and probably needs to see a disarmament and a disbandment of Hamas in order for Israel to agree to any deal.
Thank you very much for joining us, Joshua Barnes. And we now move on to our next story. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, GHF, a new Swiss-based non-profit, said it has begun distributing food to Palestinians in the Gaza Strip and appointed a new executive director following earlier setbacks. This comes after the rollout of the US-Israel-backed aid plan was delayed due to Jake Wood resigning. The executive director of GHF stepped down after reports in several news outlets raised questions about the group's independence and its connections with Israel. Wood also stated that the operation could not fulfill its mission in a way that adhered to humanitarian principles. GHF has said that John Ekray will succeed Wood on an interim basis. According to reports, Palestinians have already received aid packages. GHF has said in a statement that more trucks with aid will be delivered and the flow of aid will increase each day. The GHF is taking over the handling of aid despite objections from the United Nations. The desperately needed supplies reportedly started flowing on a day that saw Israeli strikes kill at least 52 people in Gaza. According to reports in Russia, accuses Kyiv of provoking moves to derail peace talks. The Defense Ministry claims Europe backed these actions. Moscow says it remains committed to a peace deal. The Foreign Ministry confirms work is ongoing on a draft memorandum. The document will lay out terms for a ceasefire and possible settlement. Russian President Vladimir Putin earlier said Russia is ready to work with Ukraine on this. Meanwhile, China rejects claims it supplied lethal aid to Russia. Beijing says it never provided such weapons to any side. Diplomatic efforts continue amid growing mistrust on all sides. This comes as Russian Defense Ministry says its forces have downed 99 Ukrainian drones overnight, while Ukraine's Air Force says Russia launched 60 drones in overnight attack on Ukraine. Taiwan's Ministry of National Defense reported increased Chinese military activity around Taiwan, with 61 PLA aircraft, sorties, and several naval vessels detected in one day. Many aircraft crossed the Taiwan Strait's median line and entered Taiwan's air defense identification zone. Taiwan's military is prioritizing combat readiness to deter Chinese threats, with President Lai Ching-te emphasizing the preparation for a potential war of endurance. Training has been revamped, and asymmetric warfare tactics, including air defense and drones, are key strategies. Taiwan's extended compulsory military service and upcoming Han Kuang exercises aim to enhance defense capabilities. Meanwhile, Chinese public security authorities in the city of Guangzhou have attributed a cyber attack on an unnamed technology company to the Taiwan government, according to a statement. Based on an initial police investigation, authorities in the capital of Guangdong province have claimed that the foreign hacker organization behind the attack was supported by Taiwan's Democratic Progressive Party. The Mainland Affairs Council in Taiwan reportedly has not commented on the claim. Iran says it will not make any concessions on uranium enrichment. Foreign Ministry spokesman Ismail Bagheri made the statement in Tehran. He called enrichment an integral part of Iran's peaceful nuclear program. Bagheri added that all parties, including Oman, must respect this red line. Iran and the US have held 5 rounds of indirect talks since April. The next round's time and venue remains undecided. President Masoud Pezeshkian said Iran will cope even if talks fail. The army chief warned Iran is ready to counter any Israeli attack on its nuclear sites. Here's what Iran's foreign ministry spokesman has said.
موضوع غنیسازی به عنوان بخش لاینفک انرژی هسته‌ای صلح‌آمیز و صنعت هسته‌ای جمهوری اسلامی ایران حتماً باید حفظ بشه. ما به هیچ عنوان مجاز نیستیم که در این مورد کوچکترین نرمشی نشون بدیم و بنابراین پیشنهادهایی که مطرح میشه از طرف‌های مختلف از جمله عمان قاعدتاً این خط قرمز خیلی پررنگ ما رو حتماً مد نظر قرار خواهد.
We have anchor and correspondent Joshua Barnes joining us live from New Delhi. Joshua, what can you tell us more about this situation?
Yes, Suma, this is an extremely complicated situation that potentially has military ramifications. The situation at question is Iran's nuclear program. Now, there was a previous nuclear deal which put restrictions on the amount of uranium and other nuclear products that Iran could enrich. That was taken away by Donald Trump during his first term, and the US is looking to secure a second nuclear deal. In Iran's interest, there's current sanctions that have been placed on them by the United States. You mentioned in your summary there, talks have been ongoing, but there is a serious sticking point here, and that is Iran's uranium enrichment. Now, many experts say that Iran are close to having enough uranium enriched which would allow them to have a nuclear weapon, and this could be devastating for the Middle East and West Asia. Of course, Iran involved in conflicts with Israel. We have seen proxy groups of theirs go to direct war with Israel. Also, a strike on Israel that came from Iran last year shows the real melting pot of tensions at the moment within that region. The fear is if Iran have a nuclear weapon, the impact and the level of change it could bring to the ongoing tensions and conflicts that are at play. Now, this situation is one that Iran have said isn't the case. They say that their uranium enrichment is only for domestic use. That could be energy or other infrastructure, but many experts say that this is absolutely untrue. Now, let's take our mind back. Donald Trump, before these negotiations got underway, said that if a deal isn't agreed, then there's a potential for military action against Iran from the US. This would be a huge escalation in an already fractured relationship. It would mean potentially a wider war for the region, given the US and Israeli partnership that has been ongoing through the war in Gaza, conflict in Lebanon with Hezbollah, also Houthi strikes in Yemen. The Houthis are backed by Iran as well. The US were involved with strikes on Yemen targets after they were interrupting Red Sea shipping, though a ceasefire has come into play. All of these ongoing conflicts that have been bubbling for months, if not years, could come to a real head if there was further military action directly on Iran. That would be a big step forward. That is the risk that is being played with here, and while discussions have been ongoing and both sides say that the progress has been made, there is a fear that if a deal isn't reached, it could lead to further violence. Abbas Araghchi, the foreign minister of Iran, has been involved in these discussions. He has said that Iran are willing to work with the United States for a new deal. They've been taking place in Oman. There's been a conversation that was had in Rome as well. So there really is a wider geopolitical feeling that this deal needs to get done to avoid a bigger conflict and a potential escalation on a scale that we haven't seen yet in the Middle East and wider region. It really is at a tipping point here, but I think both sides have said discussions are moving forward in a positive way, but this could be a real sticking point. Steve Witkoff, Middle East envoy for the US, has spoken about this issue on multiple occasions, and it is a clear point in any deal. Iran saying repeatedly, this isn't the first time, a couple of days ago they also said uranium enrichment isn't something that is going to be a deal breaker in this deal, and they won't do it just to get a deal agreed. It is a clear red line for Iran, but a clear line that the US want crossing. Iran have also said in recent days that they will be okay if they walk away from a deal. That's referring to the sanctions that the US have placed on Iran, which is causing difficulties for the Iranian economy. This one is on a knife edge. More discussions will take place, in my opinion. I think there will need to be a compromise, as we're seeing across the global geopolitical standing at the moment. There seems to be a lot of conversations that need to be had in ongoing conflicts and disagreements, this another between the US and Iran. It's interesting to see what might happen with European nations. There were conversations set with European leaders and Iran over this nuclear deal. A multinational agreement was made, that one that Trump took the US out of a 2015 deal that also included European nations, Russia and China as well. So it might be that this needs to be a larger global discussion, but the discussions between the US and Iran directly, or at least indirectly, will continue to happen. The impasse is there. Compromises, I expect, will be made, but the potential risk if a deal isn't made is there.
And is there any potential of, since you have already mentioned Oman and European countries, they were involved in previous talks. Do you think is there any chance of any other country, maybe from Europe, joining these talks?
Well, yes, as I mentioned, there was a meeting that was set with European leaders that were from Britain, France, and other leading European nations that were meant to take place with the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. I think that is a possibility that could happen. That original 2015 deal, like I said, with Iran involved many countries, and that provided guarantees and a easing of sanctions. Those, of course, have resumed from the US, and there might be dialogue with other nations. As it stands, Oman are playing a mediator role. Rome have also hosted conversations as well and been part of that mediation. But direct discussions with other parties other than the US and Iran are yet to take place. I think they could happen, but this enrichment, this uranium enrichment, is a clear issue that needs to be resolved. Whether that's a compromise from the US side or Iranian side, or just a flat refusal, we wait to see.
Thank you very much, Joshua Barnes, for joining us and for that insight. We now move on to our next story. Judge Ehsan Bagheri, head of branch 102 of the Criminal Court 2 in Shiraz, Iran, was assassinated today morning on his way to work. The judiciary's Mizan Online reported that 2 assailants attacked and killed Bagheri. His motives remain unclear, and the attackers are still at large. Bagheri, a native of Fars province, had previously served as a prosecutor and investigator in revolutionary courts. Chief Justice Gholam Hossein Mohseni AJ has ordered a special investigation. This attack follows a similar assassination in January, where 2 judges were killed in Iran's Supreme Court. In a separate incident, a man killed 4 people in Shiraz on Monday before being shot and arrested by security forces. Now we stay in Asia. Hong Kong Chief Executive John Lee has invited Harvard students to study in Hong Kong. This comes after the U.S. moved to restrict foreign student enrollment at Harvard. Lee called the U.S. actions discriminatory and unfair. He said Hong Kong's doors are wide open to affected students. The city has already doubled its quota for non-local students to 40%. Lee promised to consider increasing the quota further if needed. This comes as Harvard is facing a ban on enrolling foreign students, but a U.S. court has temporarily blocked it. The move creates uncertainty for international students, including those from Hong Kong. The all-party delegation led by Indian Member of Parliament Supriya Sule has concluded their visit to Qatar, which was the first country in the leg of the 4-nation visit of this delegation. In Doha, the delegation members held fruitful interactions with Qatari dignitaries at the Shura Council and the government of Qatar. After concluding their Qatar visit, the Group 7 MPs left from Doha for Johannesburg, South Africa. Meanwhile, all-party delegation led by Indian Member of Parliament Ravi Shankar Prasad has met various French leaders and think tanks to convoy India's strong and united stance against terrorism. The all-party delegation led by Prasad conveyed this message that the terrorist attack in Pahalgam last month was a deliberate attempt to undermine peace and development in the Union territory of Jammu and Kashmir. Prasad also exhorted members of the Indian community in France to make every effort to showcase India as a beacon of peace against terrorism. Bangladesh's Supreme Court overturned the conviction of Azharul Islam, a key leader of the Islamist party Jamaat-e-Islami, acquitting him of crimes against humanity. Islam, who had been on death row since 2014 for alleged war crimes during Bangladesh's 1971 independence war, was released after spending over a decade in custody. His case was part of a series of convictions of senior political leaders under the regime of former Minister Sheikh Hasina, who fled the country in 2024 after being ousted by a student-led revolt. While 5 other convicted leaders were executed, Islam's lawyer described his survival as justice. The ruling has sparked celebrations among Jamaat-e-Islami supporters who remembered the hanged leaders as victims of judicial killings. The party gearing up for elections set by the interim government for 2026 continues to face criticism for its wartime role in supporting Pakistan. King Charles III is set to deliver a historic speech in Canada's Parliament today, his first since becoming a monarch. The 76-year-old king, who's battling cancer, was invited by Prime Minister Mark Carney to open Parliament amid growing tensions with the U.S. Carney says the speech written by his office will lay out plans to build Canada strong and reassert its sovereignty in the face of repeated threats from President Donald Trump. Trump has sparked outrage in Canada by suggesting the country could become America's 51st state and launching tariff wars that hit Ottawa hard. The speech, called the throne speech, will be delivered in a temporary Senate as the main Parliament building undergoes renovations. This is only the 3rd time a Canadian monarch has personally delivered this speech. The last was in 1977 by Queen Elizabeth II. The king's visit comes just weeks after Carney's election victory, which centered on who could best stand up to Trump. Sean Diddy Combs' former assistant is expected to testify in his ongoing sex trafficking trial in New York. Capricorn Clark, who once called Combs the devil, is set to detail a 2011 incident where Combs allegedly broke into rapper Kid Cudi's Hollywood Hills home. Kid Cudi told the court that Clark called him that night, terrified, saying she was forced to join the break-in with Combs and his security team. Clark may also be questioned on an email from Cassie Ventura, Combs' then-girlfriend, warning that Combs was threatening to leak sex tapes and hurt her and Cudi. The email was also sent to Ventura's mother, who testified that she felt physically sick reading it. Kid Cudi also claimed his Porsche was destroyed by a Molotov cocktail in 2012, implying Combs' involvement. Other ex-assistants say Combs once forced Clark to take a lie detector to test after a robbery. The trial is expected to last several weeks. Combs has pleaded not guilty and could face life in prison if convicted. We have a breaking news. The U.S. Embassy in India has issued a sharp warning to Indian students studying in the U.S. Follow your visa rules or risk serious consequences. Students who skip classes, drop out, or leave their programs without proper notification may have their visas revoked and could be barred from future travel to the U.S. This comes amid a legal tussle over international students' rights under the Trump administration. A federal judge has temporarily blocked student deportations, but the risk remains high for any violation. Well, that's all we have time for. We will continue to bring more news updates from around the world.